HT2 Labs, and I've worked here for, I would say, around 18 months now, maybe even closer to 20 months. My job is to make sure that people like you and other partners and other clients are getting the most out of their platform. Are they wringing every single drop, every cent that they've spent on the platform? Are they getting as much value from it as they can? And that's the reason that I'm running today's session, because facilitating a course is, I would say, as important, maybe more important than actually building the course. I guess it depends on your perspective. So let's have a look at the things that we're going to cover off today. I'm going to talk about the impact. I am recording it, Teresa. Yes, would that be useful for you to access afterwards? Perfect. Yeah, I am recording it. It's usually a 50-50 as to whether I remember to press the record button or not. But today I did remember, so this will be wrapped up in a recording. And yeah, you're very welcome to share it afterwards, Teresa. No problems at all. So we're going to talk and show you some data that I have about the impact of a facilitated course versus a non-facilitated course. And I want to show this data to you because some clients, and I'm not necessarily saying that you're one, but some clients, their Curatr users receive a little bit of pushback from the business. They don't want their courses to be facilitated because it takes time, it takes effort, it takes a trainer or a facilitator or a subject matter expert. It takes them away from what they might call their day job. So I often like to just present some data to people just to show the difference between one approach and another approach. And I often find that by showing that difference to people, they kind of come to the conclusion themselves about what's probably more useful to invest their time in. So we'll be covering that off during today's session. I'm also going to talk about how the course dashboard can be used to assist your facilitation. There's some things on the course dashboard that are they're very, very useful to help people understand what's going on in the course and to help them facilitate it. So we'll be looking at that. I'm also going to talk about using emails to nudge participants. Now, some people don't necessarily consider this to be facilitation, but I very definitely do. I think it's a key part of facilitation, and I often think it's a part that is overlooked. And actually, if it's used intelligently, you can get a lot of value from it for not a lot of effort. So it's a great balance between effort and return. So we're going to be looking at that as well. So let's look at this first thing that I talked about, the impact of a facilitated course versus a non-facilitated course. Now, Teresa, before I move on, do you want me to quantify what I mean by facilitated? Because it can mean different things to different people. Would it be of value if I was to explain what I'm talking about here? No worries. Let's look at an unfacilitated course, non-facilitated. I would consider a non-facilitated course to be where you build the Curatr course, you enroll your users in it, you launch the course and invite them into it, and then walk away. Walk away as in that's the work done. You hope and pray and cross your fingers that people will jump into the course, that they will get stuck in, that they will have conversations, that they will be social, that they will contribute, that they will do all the things that you want them to do in the Curatr course, which is why you invested in it. That's what I would consider a non-facilitated course. You build it, you launch it, and that's kind of the end of the commitment to it, other than maybe some reporting. A facilitated course I would consider to be containing any or all of the following. You build the course, you invite people to the course, you launch the course, and then you participate in the course, not as a participant, but as a facilitator. You praise people when they make good contributions. You get people to tell you more and expand upon their answers. You look for connections between what people are saying and help people to connect to one another. You perhaps contribute some items yourself, because it's always interesting to see the facilitator's perspective. So maybe if you're using contribution objects, you maybe actually contribute yourself into the discussion, because your point is just as valid as anybody else's. You're in the back end of Curatr and you're looking at how people are behaving. You're structuring your facilitation to bring along those people that may not be participating as much. Maybe you're hooking into the people that are participating a lot and you're getting them unofficially to help you co-facilitate. All of these things that I'm talking about, they're all kinds of what I would call facilitation. And it could be that you use all of them. It could be that you just choose to use some of them. That's what I mean by facilitation. Does that make sense, Teresa? Brilliant, thank you. I'm going to bring a few things up on screen for you, first of all. This is course A. Does this look familiar to you? Does that, it may not look specific to your courses, but does that graph look familiar to you? I thought it might, yeah, I thought it might. You're familiar with what this is. This is an engagement graph from the Curatr dashboard of a course. Just to remind you that each of these coloured graphs are all referring to the same course, course A, and they represent different things. Blue represents the comments, green active users, orange contributions, and red object views. And you can see the numbers in the brackets afterwards. That indicates the high point in the last 30 days, because each of these graphs represents a 30-day period. This is a screenshot from a course, and the screenshot was taken mid-October. So the right-hand edge here of each of these graphs, that's representing mid-October. And the left-hand edge of each of these graphs is representing mid-September. And of course, this is the transition throughout that month. Does that make sense? Is that a useful reminder for you, Teresa? Brilliant. That's course A. Now let's have a look at course B. This is a different course. It's a similar subject and it's a very similar audience, but it is a different course. It is also taken from the same 30-day period, mid-October or mid-September to mid-October. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to very, very briefly, just going to change the layout of the screen, because I've got a question for you. I've got a challenge for you here, a little quiz. Which of these do you think was the facilitated course? Do you think it was course A or do you think it was course B? Which of these was facilitated? You believe it was course A. Okay. I am pleased to tell you that no surprises, you're absolutely right. Course A, the top course, was the facilitated course. I've got another challenge for you now, another question. Let's see how you get on with this one. Which course do you think had the most participants? Course A or course B? Course A. Okay, so you believe that course A was facilitated and you believe it had the most participants. You are 50% correct. You already know, because I've mentioned that course A had the most participants. You're right. Course A was facilitated. You might be interested to know that course B, the bottom course, had approximately 1,200 participants. Course A had approximately 600 participants. There were 50% less people in course A than course B, but course A was facilitated. I believe it is, Teresa. I believe it is. Now, this isn't a true A/B test because they were different courses with different people. So we can't say from a research perspective categorically that it was. But just look at the difference there. Same platform, Curatr, same type of course. It was around social learning and learning technologies. Very similar audience, Same period of time in the year, mid-September to mid-October 2016. But the big difference, I think, is the facilitation issue. You're absolutely right to raise that. We think that's the factor between the two. And I like to show this to clients because if ever they are being pushed or if ever they are being coerced into delivering unfacilitated courses, I think this graph is very useful to share with people to show just what difference or what you're going to lose from the experience if it's unfacilitated. So what are your thoughts on that? I'm going to stop talking. I'm just going to throw it over to yourself. What are your thoughts on what you're seeing on the screen in front of you? I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Teresa. It's not surprising. There's nothing earth-shatteringly revealing in this. When you think about it, a classroom course that is facilitated is highly likely to be more successful than a classroom course where the trainer just sits at the back and answers their emails all day long. There's a huge difference between the two. And of course, that difference is just the same, if not even more so, when you're online and you're doing things asynchronously or not at the same time as one another. So that's a piece, I always like to bring that up, and hopefully that you found that little insight into some research that we did last year useful. So well done. You got 50% of the questions right. And it is a little bit of a trick question, that second one, because everything suggests, doesn't it, that the more engaged course is going to have more people in it. But actually, it's the opposite way around. And I think it was down to facilitation. Just going to move the screen on. We're now going to look at how the course dashboard can be used to assist your facilitation. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change screen layouts again, and I'm going to share my screen with you. And we're going to actually take a look in the back end of a Curatr course. We're going to look at a live course. Okay, what you should be seeing now, it'd be great if you could just confirm in the chat panel, you should be able to see the course dashboard of a course called Foundations of the Social Age. If you could just confirm that. You see everything. Brilliant. Thank you very much, Teresa. Let's have a talk through what this is telling us. Now, I'm very mindful of time. We're probably about just under halfway through this session. We're going well, though, because it's a one-to-one conversation. So don't worry about the time. I need to keep an eye on it, though. As I'm talking, if there's anything that I'm not getting to that you really want to see or have explained, do let me know, and I will get to that. But for now, until you let me know in the chat panel, I'm just kind of going to go through step by step. So the first thing that we can see in the center of the screen here, where I'm moving my mouse up and down, we can see the activity feed. And we can filter the activity feed using this drop down to look at everything, which is my preferred option, if I'm honest, or just to look at the comments, just to look at the contributions, or to look at people's progress. I personally like to look at everything in the feed, and that way I can kind of guarantee I'm not going to miss anything. What we see down here is we can see if it was left today, what time it was left, and if it wasn't left today, what day was it left. So we can see that this was left in the last 5 days, and all of these comments below have been left in the week previous. What a lot of people don't realise, it's a fairly new feature in Curatr, is that if I was to click on this comment here, if I was to click on this little button here, I've actually had opened up to me now the comment itself, and I can see the title of the object, I can see the discussion point that was asked, and I can also see Lisanne Vanderlee's response here. What I can do is I can actually type my response to Lisanne. If I hit the reply button, which I'm not going to do because this is a live course, then I am replying to her in the front end. This is really, really useful. Last year, when we started the year, I was having to do most of my facilitation in the front end of Curatr. I had to go into each level, I had to look at each object in each level, and I left my comments there. And that's quite time consuming. Now with this feature, you don't even have to go into the front end of Curatr. You can just respond from the back end. You can look at all the comments that have been left since you were last in there. You've used it yourself. Well, that's brilliant, Susie. Do you know if your trainers are aware of this, your facilitators? Because that could be something that they're not aware of that might save them a bit of time. It might help to convince. They are aware. Well, that's great news. I won't labour the point anymore. If they're aware of it, fantastic. The other thing that we have are that they're not using it. Yeah, fair enough. They may be aware of it, but if they're not using it, it's kind of not that useful to them, is it? Let's have a look at these graphs in the top of the screen. We've got a blue graph and we've got a green graph. Are you familiar with what these are telling you? I think that's my first question. Are you happy with what the information it's giving you? You're familiar with them. And are you familiar with exactly what makes up engagement? Are you familiar with what the quality is being judged upon? Because whilst the axes may appear very straightforward, okay, that's fair enough. So I'm going to do two things. I'm going to explain to you, but what I'm also going to do is towards the end of this session, I'm going to share a link with you that will take you to the help centre where all of this, in fact, you know what, I'm going to do it now, where all of this information is contained. So I'm just going to go to our help centre and I'm going to search for Curatr, when I can spell it. You think I'd know how to spell it by now. Dashboard. There we go. I'm going to send you this link now through. There we go, captured that. Great. Let me just drop that into the chat panel. And you've got that link there now. Let me go back and explain it to you. So the blue graph represents progress versus engagement. The bottom axis represents people's progress. How far are they through the course? How are they progressing? The vertical axis represents engagement. Now, engagement is made up of a number of things. It's made up of comments, replies, contributions. I think votes is an aspect of it. So there are a number of actions that lead to that engagement. It's not just the obvious one of commenting or viewing. It's a range of things that make up that particular score. And again, it's broken down into specifics in that article that I sent across. Looking at the green graph, the vertical axis is quality. And the quality is determined by something quite simple, really. It's by their peer votes. So we know that in Curatr, when you leave a comment, people can vote on that comment. They can give you a thumbs up if they want to. That's what leads to the quality score. So the higher people are appearing on this, such as myself, that was Yoitska here, that suggests that Yoitska is getting more votes from people than others. That suggests that Yoitska is saying things that her peers and possibly the facilitator are considering to be quality contributions. And the quantity axis along the bottom, well, that's quite simple. That represents, how much are they saying? They may be saying a lot, but it's really rubbish, or they might not be saying a great deal, but people are considering it to be real quality. In an ideal world, this is where people will be in this blue square here, or this green square here. It's the perfect sweet spot between doing lots and doing lots that's good quality. This is really where you want people. Now, a little tip and trick that I sometimes recommend to clients is don't worry about the people that are at the bottom of this dashboard. You've got other things in Curatr that can help you chase these people, like your your reports that you can run. I like to use this engagement dashboard to look at the people who are doing well, people like Harriet, people like Donna and Yoitske and Harriet again and Donna again and Imran. I like to look at these people that are in the top right-hand corner because they're the people that I want to try and hook. They're the people that I want to go to, maybe on a one-to-one basis via email and say, hey, Imran, you're doing really well on this course. You're making some great contributions and people are liking what you're saying. If you've got a moment, do you think you could go back to some of the earlier levels and just leave a few comments or respond to people there? Whenever I do that, 9 times out of 10, people respond very well to that approach. They like being praised and they like the fact that you're asking them to kind of come into the facilitator fold, unofficially, of course, and help other people out. So what are your thoughts on what I've just mentioned there? Is that something that you could consider doing within your organization? Is that an approach that you think would go down well? Or could you see some challenges? You love it. Oh, that's great. Always loved it. Oh, I always like those 3 words. I love it. It's an idea. You may need to modify it. You may need to be careful how you approach people. I'm not sure of the internal politics, but it works. It usually works. I've never had anybody come back and say, how dare you? Most of the time, I can just see that people then go back into earlier levels and start drumming up conversation. And of course, they're doing the work for you as opposed to you having to do it. So moving down, I'm going to look at this particular section. What level are my users? This is a very, very high level, and it is a very high level insight into how people are doing across your entire course. We can see if I hover my mouse over the first level, 41 people have finished that level. However, 302 people are at the start or have yet to start it. So, the vast majority haven't done a great deal yet. We can see that 25 people have finished level 2, 318 people have yet to do something in there. So this particular trend that we're seeing as I move my mouse across here, this is very, very typical of free courses, free MOOCs. This course that we're looking at now is not an internal course. This is a free course that ourselves and one of our partners, Sea Salt Learning, that we've chosen to offer to the L&D community. That type of usage, lots of people signing up, far less people doing anything, is absolutely typical and expected. And it's just the way the world is, I guess. I think we've all signed up to things and not actually gone and done anything. This just represents that. This shows that. I suspect for internal courses or courses where people are paying for them, that statistic, I hope, looks quite different. I've worked inside business. I've worked inside banks and the energy sector, the Ministry of Defence. And I know from my experience that whilst there are still people that don't do what they're being asked to do, it's usually the minority. How does that resonate with yourself, Teresa? Are your courses well attended? Do you tend to find that people get stuck in, or do you find that a lot of people start and don't really go any much further? They need to attend. Okay, so there's a motivator there. First of all, it's a requirement of the job, I guess. It's a new hire program. Well, in that case, I would imagine of all employees, they're probably the keenest and most eager to demonstrate their keenness and their suitability for hire. So not a bad audience to be concentrated on. Moving down again, we can see that we've got the activity for the last month. Now, this is useful, but if I'm really honest, I think any facilitator who's paying regular attention to their course, they kind of know this anyway. They have a gut feeling for how a course is progressing. We can see that this course had a huge spike at the beginning. And I'm looking at this blue graph. It had a huge spike of interest at the beginning, and then that interest has kind of dwindled off, but it's still, we're still getting 67 comments in a day 2 days ago. we're seeing that the contributions had a huge spike, but they're still fairly constant over the past week or so. They're just not as high as they were. So this is useful for you to be able to see at a glance, how is my course progressing? How is it? What's the behavior like generally? Don't worry about who's saying what or what the quality is or anything like that. As a broad spectrum, how's my course progressing? And you can see those figures there. So that's pretty much the course dashboard. You know, you were already aware of the activity feed. You were already doing that as your trainers, you hope would start to do that. But hopefully you've got some insight about how you can use these graphs here and what those graphs are exactly telling you. And the information below is useful at a glance. If you really want to dig into the data, as you're probably aware, that's what your report section for is on the left-hand side of the screen. Then you can really get into the meat and the nitty-gritty of how people are doing without having to look at this very broad overview. This is exactly what it says on the tin. This is a dashboard. It gives you a high-level visual idea about how things are doing. You want that detail, as you've spotted quite right, you want that important detail, then you need to go into your reports and have a look at that. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and I'm going to come back into the main Adobe Connect room with you. I'm just going to go back to my slides now. Let's just remind ourselves what we were just looking at for a second. We were looking at how the dashboards can be used to assist your facilitation. The next thing I want to show you, I want to give you a little bit of data first and then show you or remind you perhaps how you can do this. We did a course last year. It lasted for the entire year. It started on January the 18th, 2016, and it finished on January the 20th, 2017. So it lasted a shade over 365 days. We did that for a number of reasons, one of which was that we wanted to see over a protracted period of time what the impact of email nudges were within Curatr. What impact did they have? Did people ignore them? Were they the most valuable thing since water was invented? Or were they just useful? So we did a bit of research. Be interested to know, before I share this research, before I share this data, how are you using emails from within Curatr? How do you go about nudging people? Do you nudge people, or do you just launch it and hope that you're not using them yet? I like that last word there, yet. You're open to being persuaded, are you, Teresa? You want to use it. Well, I hope that this will not only give you the rationale as to why you would use them, but also how you could use them as well. Let's have a look. Last year, I sent out an email every single week that the course was running. In the first 2 weeks of the course, which were in January, you'll notice that the title says excluding January, I sent out an email 3 times a week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then the next week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. That's why we've excluded January from this data that I'm about to share with you. The rest of this data below takes into account every month of the year last year, except for January. And then it was only 2 weeks of January. Let's have a look at the data. Before I do, are you familiar with what an XAPI statement is? Are you broadly familiar with the term XAPI or tin can? That's absolutely fine. XAPI is it's a piece of code, it's a piece of language that Curatr and other platforms, it's a way of sending data. Curatr, your Curatr site is automatically creating XAPI statements, whether you want it to or not. It just does it out of the tin. You don't have to think about it. If you have that hooked up to a learning record store, something like Learning Locker, or there are other learning record stores out there, all of that data can be collected in a single place, and you can start to do some analysis on the data. What we did was we hooked our course up to Learning Locker, which is our learning record store of choice. We own it. And we started to look at some data. Per day of the year last year, excluding January, there were 80.2 ex-API statements sent. That was the mean number per day. There were 80.2 interactions, if you like, in Curatr each day. On the day we sent out a nudge email, that figure rose to 126.7 interactions per day. So, a fairly significant increase. On the nudge day and the following day, because remember, not everybody opens an email up on the day they receive it. So we also looked at the following day, and we could see that that figure was 114.6. So still quite a significant increase from 80.2. What all of this is telling us is that sending emails, despite everybody complaining about getting too many emails, despite everybody doing what they can to minimize the emails that they send and receive, sending an email from Curatr gets people to come back into Curatr. I don't believe that 126.7 throughout an entire 11 months is a fluke. I don't think it's a coincidence that just happens to happen throughout the entire year. I think there's an absolute correlation between the email being sent, people receive the email, they read it, they follow the link, and they go back in and they do stuff inside Curatr. So if ever you're being challenged about the value that sending an email could have, if ever there's any pushback in your business saying that people get too many emails, that nobody will read it, that nobody will follow through, here's a great piece of data here to show this was a free course. These people didn't have to do this. These people weren't on a new hire program. They were just general members of the learning and development community. Look at those difference in figures there. Let me go and show you back in the back end of Curatr again, because I want to show you where those email options are, or remind you where those email options are. I'm sure you've already seen them. Just sharing my screen again. I'm going to go to a slightly different course this time, because this isn't my course that we're looking at. It's being run for us by some friends of ours. So I'm going to go and look for the course that I ran, because I know that the data is in the back end. Here's the course. Here's the activity feed, very similar to what we've looked at. In my email options here, there are several different options in this email field here. Could I ask if you're using any of these at the moment, and if so, which ones you're using? You're using a template. Okay, let me just open up templates. That's interesting to know. To invite learners only. Okay, so you've got a template set up somewhere, something like this, although I imagine there's only one. And then you're using that template to invite users into the course using a page like this. Is that correct? Perfect. Thank you for confirming that, Teresa. So well done, first of all, on using it to invite users in, and well done on setting a template up as well. You've gone further than a lot of people do in this area. What you can see here, let me just expand this to show all of them. You can see this course that I ran throughout a year. And with a few exceptions, you can see that I've named them week 1, day 1, week 1, day 3, week 1, day 5. Very unimaginative. But it's the subject, it's the central column here that the end user would actually see. This left-hand column is just for my reference. So let's just pick a random date. Week 27, day 3. Let's have a look at that. Here we can see that there's my email template. I start it off by giving a short paragraph that's relevant to something that's happened in the past week. So this could be somebody asking a question. This could be somebody making a great contribution. This might be something that's been in the news. Maybe we ran a level on artificial intelligence last February. Sorry, a year last February. And it just happened to be a month where artificial intelligence was in the news. It was completely coincidental. But this was just an interesting way of saying, hey, You know this course that you're on about artificial intelligence? Well, it's also in the news. That goes to show how much people are talking about it in the outside world. So I always have a little opening paragraph. In this section, I talked about any live events that were taking place in relation to this course that may not be relevant to you. In this section, I'll remind people how they can go about, if they've got any questions, what they can do. And then in this section here, which is quite a long section, I picked a bad example here, but I talk about what people can, a little reminder about something that they can go and do. Sometimes this section might be reminding people that there's a leaderboard and that they can go and look at that leaderboard and where they can find it to see how they're doing in comparison to their peers. Sometimes this section called One Last Thing is about reminding people about voting, reminding people that if they see something that is useful, that makes them think, that is helpful, reminding them to vote that up. Because if everybody is voting on one another, if everybody's looking for quality comments, the whole standard of the course can rise up then. I'm going to go and briefly share the help center with you again, and I'm going to search for email templates, because what I created quite recently, it's only a few weeks ago, I created an article called Example Email Templates, and I'll send you the link for this. We can see some examples here of some emails that I send out pre-launch, before the course actually starts. Now, this isn't the invitation email. This is an email that goes out to people that have enrolled on the course before the course actually starts. So we can see that I'm saying to people here, hey, why don't you log in and update your profile? Why don't you log in and update a profile picture? Why don't you bookmark this on your phone so you can access it when you're mobile? None of it is actually anything to do really with the course content. It's all about getting people prepared for when they can access the course content. And I usually do that 7 days before a course. Then maybe 24 hours before the course starts. You could choose whatever timings you wanted. I have a launch email here, maybe something similar to what you use. And then the majority, and it's quite obvious why, the majority of my emails go out after the course has started. Now, in this example I've been talking to you about, they went out every week over a year. This week would be a Monday, next week would be a Tuesday, the week after would be a Wednesday. And of course, for a course that lasts 52 weeks, you can get a lot of cycles through. You can start to get a lot of patterns emerging, which is where we get our research from. But I'll send you the link to this article, because it may be that there's something in here, not directly, but it may just sow some ideas of inspiration. It may give you some ideas about some emails that you could create, some email templates that you might want to set up, and have a little experiment. And you'd be, well, I was going to say you'd be surprised, but I don't think you would be. What I think you would be is you'd be very pleased at seeing the correlation between sending an email, and you can almost see it happen. You can almost go to your course dashboard, look at the days preceding that email being sent. This is this course has died now. It's not running anymore, which is why the comments look flat. But you can see that a spike of activity just happens to be the day or the day after you sent an email. So you don't really need XAPI to prove the value that sending an email will have. You'll be able to see it in the spike of activity in the comments, the active users, the object views, and possibly the contributions if you're using contributions. So hopefully that link that I've just dropped into the chat pod there will give you some ideas for some inspiration. Other things that you can do in emails, you can set yourself up a digest. Are you using the digest feature at all? Is that something you're familiar with, or something that you use or would like to know more about? I really like the digest feature. It's very simple. What it allows you to do is it allows you or whoever is facilitating the course to receive an automated email from Curatr telling you all of the comments that have been made, since 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon. These times are completely configurable. You can decide when you want to receive them. I used to set myself up so that every day I received a notification as to what comments had been made, what objects had been uploaded, and what levels had been completed. And then once a week on a Friday, oh, it looks like it's changed, I would receive an update as telling me who's completed the course. All of this information just comes to you. It takes about 30 seconds to set one of these digests up by going through this simple field here. And then you can kind of sit back a little bit then. You can kind of think, I'm going to get on with the day job, but every day at 3 o'clock, I'm going to pencil out some time in my diary for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, however long, because I know at 3 o'clock, I'm going to receive an email from Curatr, completely automated, and I can then see what people are talking about. I can get involved in conversations. I can facilitate the course if I'm choosing to, and can increase the engagement because we know the impact that facilitation has over non-facilitation. Remember those A-B courses that I showed you there. Really simple to set this up, Teresa. And if you look in the help center under, just search for digest or email digest, there's some simple screenshots showing you what to do. Although I imagine you'd be able to pick this up very simply. You simply pick the type that you want, comments, completions, level completions or user objects. How often do you want to receive it? What day? What time do you want to receive it? And who do you want to receive it? Is it just you, or is it you and a subject matter expert? You can separate them by using their email addresses by using a comma. I'm glad you found that useful. Just going to stop screen share. In fact, no, before I stop screen sharing, let me just ask, is there anything else from an email perspective? Because I know you said that you'd like to start using them. Is there anything else from an email perspective you'd like to see or ask a question about before I close this section down? Okay, thanks, Teresa. Let me take us back into the main room again. Good, I'm glad about that. So we've kind of got to the end of what I wanted to talk about, what I wanted to share with you. What I'd like to do though, whilst it's still fresh in your mind, what I'd like you to do is on the left-hand side of this screen, you can see a toolbar, and the letter T is about halfway down that toolbar, maybe just above halfway. If you could just click on that and then click on the whiteboard, I'm really interested to know what are you going to take away from today's session? What's it made you think about? What are you going to take away and try and experiment with or use or apply? Just click on that T symbol, click on the whiteboard, and just like I'm doing here, just type in what your action is, like this. The email nudge and the digest feature. Okay, if you need a hand, if you want reminding about this, then I would suggest your first port of call is go to the help center, because there's quite an extensive section on emails and everything that falls under emails. There's actually quite a lot in there because there's a lot of email functionality. But I definitely suggest going to have a look at that, refreshing what this session's been about. If you still need a reminder, you always know where I am. I'm only at the end of a phone or a Skype call or an email or something like that. Before you dash off, though, there's just something else that I want to share with you that you may find useful. I'm just going to adjust the screen ever so subtly. And I'm going to bring in a couple of links here. We've got some links there that relate to some articles that we've written that expand upon what I've talked about in today's session. So if you want to, I talked about these 12-month MOOC that I've run. We've written a blog about that. There's an article about using emails in Curatr, the breakdown of the Curatr dashboard. They're links that I've already put in the chat panel. There's also a HT2 Labs overview document. Now, I know that you're used to working with us from a Curatr perspective, but if you're interested in looking at the other things that we do and the other products that we've got, and I talked about XAPI today. So if you want to have a look at how that fits in, you're more than welcome to click on that HT2 Labs overview document, click on the download file button, and it'll prompt you where you want to download it to. And then you can take a look at that offline if you wish to. So I'm just going to leave that on the screen there. We're just coming up to the top of the hour. So I'm going to do one of two things. I'm going to stop talking, you'll be pleased to hear, and open it up to you if you've got any questions about today's session, or indeed any questions that haven't been about today's session, but they're about Curatr. And whilst I'm on the call, I'll be very happy to answer them. I'll also leave it open for a few minutes to give you a chance to open up any of those links and also download that document if you wish to do so.